Good morning. Today we have an awesome topic. I'm really excited about this topic. You know why? Because this topic is very personal. And also, I know for a fact that a lot of us homeowners out there have faced every single thing that I'm going to talk about. And if you haven't yet, then you are in the right place. And the reason why this is personal is because these are a lot of mistakes that I have made personally. I hate admitting it. The ones that I've seen clients make as well. I've seen a lot of clients make this over my years in real estate. And this is all stuff that I wished someone would have warned me about before it cost real money and real stress. Because here's the deal, it's 2025. It's almost summer, right? We're in April. There's so much uncertainty. Let's just take a deep breath. We're not going to get into all of that nonsense. We're just going to focus on our houses, right? We're homeowners. We're going to focus on our houses. We're going to focus on what we can control. We're not going to go down the rabbit hole of anything else. We're going to focus on what we control, because this topic today isn't like, oh, you got to change your air filter, man, of your HVAC. We know that. We know you have to do those basic things. These are the things that sneak up on homeowners, the ones that you don't see coming until you're like freaking knee deep in all these repairs and all these regrets. Because this happens all of the time as a homeowner. Today, I want to make sure that you don't get blindsided. That's my big goal for us today. I want to ensure that you're not going to get blindsided by things that you do not see coming. Because when it comes to real estate, and specifically, actually, when it comes to home ownership, when you own a house, you have to be weary of what you have, right? This channel is all about protecting your biggest asset, which is your home, right? And I'm not, I know you can make the argument, oh, my kids are my biggest asset, my health is. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about what you actually own. And for the vast majority of homeowners, the biggest asset that they own in their life is their home. And how do we protect that? That's everything that I'm going to be focusing on today. And I'm really, really excited to dive into it because, again, I've made all of these mistakes myself. I've learned from them. They have cost me thousands and thousands of dollars that I wish I would have knew before, but I didn't. And it's great that you're here because you're actually going to be able to understand like where you cannot go wrong. That's like the number one goal, is for me to pass on to you where to not go wrong. So let's jump into it. Mistake number one. Here we go. There have been many repairs that I've had to make, many updates that I've had to make over my time as a homeowner. Now, this one in particular was in the basement of my current home where I am right now. And look, I own an older home, okay? This house was built in 1930 or 1931. So it's coming up on being 100 years old. So for all you out there who own older homes, you know the things that we go through. And even if you don't own an older home, that's okay because you'll still get something from this. Now, in our basement, it was refinished. So the owners prior to us refinished our current basement. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we love this house and why we ended up buying this house, because in our previous home, we didn't have a finished basement. We actually had a mess of a basement, a complete mess, because our other property, which we do still own and we rent it out, it is located in a flood zone. So we always had issues with the basement getting water in it. We just knew that. It was part of owning that home. It became normal to us. It as much of a nuisance as it is, it just became normal for us, right? So anyway, this current house that I'm in now, which we love, the basement is finished. So I had noticed at one point there was a water stain, and right by where we have this little setup where our girls, they have a bunch of their crafts and stuff, and they can color and they can play down there. So I noticed this little water stain, and I'm like, all right, well, it's not that bad yet, right? It's it's not significant. And then we don't always go into the basement. It's not very used. Oh, back then it wasn't. It is now, right? Because we made some updates to it. Um, we also had a couple cats, and they pretty much like lived in the basement. So they kind of like took that over as their space. And I don't want to get into having cats, but anyway, they passed away. So we reclaimed the basement and we made it more enjoyable for us. I have my little sports den down there. The girls have their section. So anyway, when I noticed this leak, it's when we still had cats and we weren't going down there all the time. But I noticed it was small, a couple inches, and it wasn't something that I addressed right away. So as time went on, I don't know if it was like weeks that went by or what, but I noticed it started to get bigger. And I'm like, okay, this seems like it could be an issue. I don't know what it is. It has to be a leak from somewhere, right? So we have pipes above it. And time went on, and then that leak started forming black mold. So when we noticed the black mold, that is when we took action. And here is what I wish I would have done. And here is the big mistake. The big mistake is ignoring the small stuff because you think it will stay small. But the reality is those small things will turn into something bigger down the road. So it took whatever it was, weeks, months, before that slow leak turned into mold, black mold. You cannot go down there, right? We didn't have we didn't allow the girls to go down there. Called up contractors. I have a handyman who's really good, and I always suggest you find a great handyman. So gave him a call, and he was able to address it, remove the black mold. Found out that it was a slow leak in the pipe, which he fixed. And it could have been much worse, right? It could have been much worse if we let it keep going. But the fact that we let it get as far as it did, we didn't realize it was a slow leak that turned into a bigger issue, right? So if we addressed it quicker, then we would have been able to not have to pay, what we paid. I forget how much. It was like $1,500, $2,000, right? It could have been substantially easier to do. But here's the thing. Most folks, they just shrug it off until it snowballs. And once it snowballs, then you face the major mistake and the major issue that so many homeowners do. And it's like, instead of putting out a few $100s, 500, 700, you end up paying 2,000 or 3,000 because it becomes that much worse, right? It happens all the time. I had a client one time who they ignored a little leak in their basement for a couple years, right? Because, it was just like a damp corner, nothing really serious. They threw a dehumidifier down there until the time comes when you have to address it. And for a lot of people, not everyone, it's that time when they want to sell their property, right? And this was a client. I was selling their house. And this issue that they could have addressed a long time ago turns into a huge mold remediation project where they're now spending thousands of dollars and they're replacing the drywall, they're replacing flooring, they're having a professional remediate, right? Like, you wasted. They literally wasted thousands of dollars trying to address this issue when the fact is they could have addressed it sooner. And if they addressed it sooner, they wouldn't be in the position that they were in. So why this all matters is because, again, these small issues, they're not going to stay small. Anything that has to do with moisture, and water coming in, any kind of water damage, that compounds very quickly. and then eventually it's going to explode. No? So it's like, not only do you need to absolutely pay attention to those areas in your home that could be a problem. You might not have a basement. You might just have a crawl space. That doesn't mean you don't get water in your crawl space, right? A lot of people who have crawl spaces, they put up vapor barriers so they don't have to deal with that. But you have to check under your sinks, right? You have to check behind the toilets every once in a while. You have to check the corners of the basement, right? Just do it. Take some time, whether it's this week or next week or what have you, and make sure that you look at these problem areas or potential problem. If your toilet is running, and I do this all of the time, I literally just went through it. If the toilet's running, a lot of people are just like, it'll fix itself. I literally just went through this. It'll fix itself. And then it's running, and then it stops running for like a day, and then it starts running again. And then I finally lift the lid off, and I'm like, oh, what's going on in here, right? Trying to problem solve, do my DIY thing. And then eventually we're turning the toilet off. We're not using it. We're using the other ones. And then it gets annoying, and it's like, shit, I should just fix this, right? I need to just go fix this. And then I do, and it takes me, 3-4 hours to fix it because I'm YouTubing what to do. I'm YouTubing the issues and then problem solving, and then going to Home Depot and not buying and that's okay. That's part of owning a home, right? Because I could have forked out $500, $600, $700 to have someone come fix it, or I could do it myself. I could figure it out, do it right, and then problem solve. So make sure, that's mistake number one, is letting those small fixes go. Those small things that you think aren't an issue, they will turn into something bigger later. I promise you they will. Moving on, mistake number two. This one happens to all homeowners eventually. Eventually, you will be faced with this. And I'm going to talk in detail about it towards the end of this, right? Because I'm actually coming out with a full video all about this one thing, because it is a massive issue. It's a massive point of contention, and every single homeowner will experience this at some point of owning a home. 100% of people will experience this. Even if you are one of these, you'll experience it, right? Because you get stressed, right? Something gets broken. You're tired of living with your kitchen the way it is, your bathroom's the way it is. If you're like me and my wife, we're tired of going down to the basement for the washer and dryer, and we want it up on the second floor, And it's like a dream of ours, and it's something that we're going to do eventually. But I know this. I am not going to be the one that steps into our primary bathroom, grabs a sledgehammer, starts breaking things up and ripping things out, and then remodeling the bathroom myself. I know that I'm not going to do that. I know that there are a lot of people who can do that. They do own homes, right? They can do all these remodeling things themselves. But for the majority of us, we don't touch it. We don't want anything to do with it. If something breaks, if something's up with my like the electrical components in the house, if outlets aren't working, if we want to replace lights, if we want to add lights to certain rooms, if we, one of the things that we're going to do before the summer hits in our house here is our girls' room has just a chandelier, but it gets pretty hot in there, right? And there is central AC, but having a fan makes it work better, makes it cooler in there. And we want to install a ceiling fan in there with lights, right? So I'm not going to do that. I'm telling you straight up, you're probably not going to do that as well. You're busy. You have a life. The kids have all their things they have to do, and you're not just going to spend hours on the weekend trying to install, or maybe you are, but for the most part, you're probably not. So you know what you're going to do? You're going to hire a contractor. You're going to hire a handyman. The big big, 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 big mistake that most people make is just hiring the first person who answers the phone. That's it. That's the big mistake. I've had countless experiences with this. I've had countless experience with clients doing this. And it's like they tell me their biggest fear is being ghosted or overcharged by contractors. I have a Facebook group of 20 plus thousand people in my local area. I would say that probably a majority of them are homeowners. And I posted a poll the other day, and it's like, do you have trouble hiring and working with contractors? And almost all the answers said yes. Almost every single answer said yes. So we all go through this. It's the biggest fear, right? Is hiring a contractor, hiring the wrong one, hiring someone who's not going to do the work. I get it. I know I've been there and I've rushed it too. And I've regretted it. I have made rush decisions and I regretted it. And the reason why this matters is because when you don't vet, you pay in delays, you're paying in miscommunication, surprise fees, and you're going to pay in shoddy work. It always happens that way. And again, make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to go through something that's going to be amazing for you when you're in that process of hiring a contractor. It's going to be a no-brainer, something you absolutely have to listen to. And I don't want to talk about it all now. I'm going to save it for the very end. I'm going to get into now mistake number 3. I kind of already talked about it a little bit, but here's the deal. Especially right now, right? And even moving forward, right? Because you could see this video in a year from now and be like, yeah, this still this still holds true. It's the fact that when something comes up as a homeowner, and it's a very psychological thing as a homeowner, my thought is, well, I don't want to pay all this money to take care of this. I don't want to do that. I know that if I hire somebody to do this, it's going to cost thousands of dollars or what have you, hundreds. I don't know what it does. It really depends on what it was, right? So there's like this fine line that we have as homeowners between what we can do and absolutely no chance what we cannot do. There's a very fine line between those things, okay? So the big mistake that I see that I personally make these mistakes myself. And I've seen so many people, friends, coworkers, clients make these issues or make these big mistakes, and they turn into bigger issues. They turn into massive issues because when you believe that you can DIY it, you can do it yourself, the bad DIY projects will lead to massive issues. Electrical fires, water damage, structural issues, failed inspections down the line, right? I know from personal experience what I am capable of doing, what I am capable of learning and then doing, and then what I am not capable in, and that I will hire it out. I've had clients before, and this is multiple times where issues have came up. They have tried to fix them themselves. They did a very bad job, and then it fails the inspection when they go to sell. This happens all of the time. Now, you have to really understand where you fall in the category of what can I do, what can I learn to do, and what should I hire out? It's really 3 very distinct categories. That's it. It's 3 distinct categories that you really need to figure out. Everyone can do some kind of DIY themselves. Everyone can do it. I know you can. I sold a house before, and it was a flipper, right? I used to work with a lot of home flippers. Good business. A lot of times they cut corners, right? And I don't know it until the buyer comes through, makes an offer, does an inspection. I can only see things visually. And this happens a lot with flippers. Oh God, it's such a pain in the butt. But flippers will try to save money, understandably. The issue is this one client that I worked with, he was not a very handy person. He was not a very handy person. And he tried doing tile work. Now, let me explain something. Tile work, in my opinion, is it's like a work of art. Like you have to be a craftsman to do it right. Finish work in kitchens, in bathrooms, especially when it comes to tile work. In my opinion, it's like an art form. I have seen very bad tile work. I have worked with a lot of flippers. I have seen a lot of flipped homes. I have worked with a lot of contractors over the past 9, 10 years, and I've seen a lot of bad tile work done. It is a work of art, right? And I'm not saying that anyone can't do it because anyone can do it. And that's the issue. This client specifically, he tried to do this tile work and it was awful. It was awful. It was so bad that I had to tell him, I'm like, dude, you can't. Oh, no, no, no. No, it's fine. That, they're not going to pay that much attention to it. Yes, they are. Oh, it's okay. List the property anyway. And what do you know? The tile work became the main issue. And eventually he had to pay to have it done properly. And it's like, come on. You have to understand what you can do, what you can learn to do, and then what you have to hire out. DIY is great. Absolutely every homeowner should learn to do certain things. At least be able to change a stinking light bulb, right? At least be able to do that for me, right? But you need to be able to do a little bit more as well. Every single homeowner needs to figure out where their strengths lie and then where they have to hire that out. I've seen really, really, really bad things happen from people who try to DIY. I have. Because eventually, for the most part, I mean, eventually you're going to sell your house. It could be 15 years from now. You could have done a DIY thing. There can be an issue. That's a very slow build after 15 years. And once you go to sell it, it's like, what the hell happened here? Oh, well, I did this 15 years ago. It was a mess, right? So eventually it's going to come back to bite you, eventually. So you have to understand where your strengths lie and then where you should hire it out. And tell me, like, what is one thing that you tried to fix that went totally sideways? If you don't know how to test it safely, it's not a DIY job, okay? If you don't know how to test it safely, it's not a DIY job. Electrical. If you're not an electrician, please leave that to professionals. Plumbing issues, if you're not a plumber, please leave that. I'm not talking about like replacing flanges in the toilet and things like that, but like if there's like a major leak, hire a professional. HVAC issues, don't try and replace your HVAC yourself. You probably, I mean, you might be able to figure it out, but that's a huge job. If you do that wrong, you're screwed. Roofing, hire it out, right? All these big things, all these big projects, they're not DIY jobs. And if you are nervous to explain it to an inspector, if you're going to be nervous if and when that time comes, you got to call a professional, okay? Moving on. This is mistake number 4. We're rolling through this. I'm enjoying this. Oh man. This is a big one, and it happens a lot. It happens a lot, right? Because we think as homeowners that not that nothing's going to go wrong in our home, but we think that we have time. That is the issue. We always think we have time to address those big ticket items. And it's important that you understand the major components of the house and how much they will cost eventually for you to replace. So we're talking roofs, big ticket items. Siding, big ticket item if you have to replace it. If you have stucco, forget it. Forget it. That's a massive expense, you know? Windows, big expense. That's another big ticket item. HVAC, big expense. Water heaters, not as much, you know, they cost $2,000 nowadays, 2,500 for purchase and install. Flooring, you know, these are all big ticket items. And your appliances, you have to understand what it's going to cost to replace them. And here's the thing. We hopefully, I know things are a little bit challenging right now, but hopefully we all have some kind of savings out there. We all have some kind of savings, right? You're saving for your vacation. You're saving for your retirement. You're saving to buy a new car eventually. You're saving for your kids' education, right? We all have savings in some form or another. The big mistake, and I fall victim to this too, is that we don't have a savings for the house, which is a big problem because when stuff breaks and you're not ready, you scramble. And that leads to high interest credit card debt. It happens. I've done it. You know, here's the thing. And here's what I would highly suggest. Here is what I highly suggest. Quick fixes on financing are a big no-no, in my opinion, with high interest. So high interest to me are credit cards. Credit cards are notoriously 20% or more, right? And you can't just skip the repair entirely because that makes it worse. And if your HVAC goes and it's the middle of July and it's 100 degrees and you're sweating in your house because your HVAC and the AC is not working and all, right? Here is what I would suggest. And I know it's hard. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. I believe that everyone should have a home equity line of credit. Every homeowner should have a home equity line of credit. Now, I know a lot of probably financial gurus would say that's a terrible idea. Why would you put everything on credit? You should just be able to have a 6-month to 12-month savings for all of your expenses and for all. Here's the reality, man. We're strapped. We have freaking kids. We have bills to pay. You know, a lot of people aren't making $300,000, $400,000 that can have all this extra money in savings. That's not the reality. But the reality is we own homes. And a lot of people who own homes have a lot of equity. Equity across the board, across the whole US over the past 5 years have shot up. So if you've owned your home for 5 or more years, you have a pretty substantial amount of equity. That's why I would suggest that you have a home equity line of credit handy. I'm not saying to use it for vacations. I'm not saying to use it to spend frivolously. I'm saying that you use your home equity line of credit smartly, wisely on repairs and even renovations. But, and here is the big but, if you have a home equity line of credit, if you use it, you have to have a solid repayment plan. You cannot just wing it. Don't just think, because here's the deal. I've had home equity lines of credit. I've paid one off recently. I haven't opened up another one. I absolutely should, especially on our primary home, because that's where we have the most equity in our portfolio. So, you know, like a good rule of thumb is to try and save the 1%, or it's follow the 1% rule. So it's save or have available $1 per square foot per year of your home. So essentially, you know, our house total finished square feet is, I think it's like just under 3,000. So we should have about $3,000 available in case something happens, you know, save that up on a yearly basis. I've, you know, we have access. We don't have access currently to equity, but we can get access to equity. It takes a little bit, you know, it's a bit of a process to get a home equity line of credit. It's a little bit of a process, right? You got to fill out paperwork. You got to submit tax returns. You got to do all this stuff. And then the bank would be willing to lend you a portion of what your equity is. So Say for instance, you own a home, it's worth $600,000 and you owe 350,000. That's amazing. You have $250,000 of equity. Now, if you go to get a home equity line of credit, whatever bank you go through, they will lend you a portion of the $250,000, not of the total, right? Not of the total amount that the property is worth, 600,000. They will lend you a portion. Usually for your primary home, it's usually like 80 to 90% of the equity. So I'm talking about 80 to 90% of the 250,000. They will give you a home equity line of credit. And the way that it works is it's like a credit card with a floating interest rate, but the interest rate is much lower than what a credit card is. Much lower. They say it's usually prime plus 1%. Sometimes it's plus 0.75%, or sometimes it's plus 1.25 or something like that. So prime is the prime interest rate across the board, which we know, right now interest rates are higher, but in a year from now or 2 years or 3 years from now, it should be lower. But I don't know exactly what prime is right now. It could be like 6%. And then the bank adds on an additional 1% or what have you. So HELOCs are a little bit more expensive. I get it, but it's way better than a credit card. It's way better. But you only pay on what you use. You only pay on what you use. So if you have this home equity line of credit, let's just say it's $150,000. You're not paying interest or repayments on it unless you use it. Let's say you have this 150,000 and you have to use $25,000 for repairs and updates. That means that you have to pay back $25,000, and it's amortized over however many years. It depends on the home equity line of credit guidelines that you have. Usually it's I think it's usually like 5 or 10 years. So you have this HELOC, you use $25,000. That means they amortize it over, let's just say it's 10 years. You have to pay back a certain monthly repayment amount plus interest. It could be $200, $300, $400, something like that, right? And you have to pay that back every month until you pay back the $25,000. So you utilize your home, which has equity in it. You can borrow against it. You use that money to make repairs. Or you just have access to it in case anything comes up. And then you pay back the portion that you use. Plain and simple. It's as easy as that, right? It's not necessarily easy to go about getting it, right? Because that's a whole process and it's a headache. Sometimes you have to have an appraisal done. Usually they'll do desktop appraisals or sometimes they'll actually send out an appraiser to get the actual value of your home. But if you have a home equity line of credit, you have cash available in case something comes up. And that's big. And because this all goes back to that big issue is when you try, the big issue is not having money available when things go wrong. Something will go wrong. Something will break. It's just what it's like to own a home. Something will happen, right? So get yourself a home equity line of credit. Moving on, mistake number 5 before we get into the bonus, which I'm excited about. This is a huge mistake that so many homeowners make, and you would be very surprised. Here's the deal. When it comes to adding value to your home, like adding real value to your home, there are a certain amount of things that add value, and then there are a certain amount of things that don't necessarily add value, but they add. I'm not saying that you're going to be selling your home, because you're not, right? We're in this mode, we're protecting our homes, right? If you're selling, it's something completely different, right? If you're making renovations to increase the value of your home to sell, that's something different. But what I always say to people is, especially clients who are thinking about selling or thinking about making renovations now because they want to sell in 2, 3, 4, or 5 years from now, there are certain things that add value and certain things that just help with the sellability that a potential buyer would expect to be done. And it's more the maintenance items, right? So when you look at maintenance items, it's generally those big ticket items that I mentioned before. The maintenance items are the roof. Buyers expect the roof to be good. If your roof is on its last leg, and everyone in your community, their house is worth $500,000, and your roof is on its last leg, it's good for another year, an appraiser is not going to say, "Oh, well, your home's worth $500,000 too," because everyone house roof is in good condition. But if yours isn't, that means you're going to be, less than that. You're going to be 480, right? And then you have to put 20,000 into a roof to get up to that point. But here's the thing, when it comes to selling, like these maintenance items, they don't necessarily add value. Maintenance items are the roofs. They're all your systems in the house. It's the plumbings, it's the windows, it's the HVAC, it's all those normal systems that make up the house that a potential buyer, whenever, would expect to already be done. And then you have things that actually add value, right? So we're talking about updating kitchens, updating bathrooms, updating your flooring, adding a deck, adding closet space, adding bedrooms and not detracting from certain areas, right? Finishing the basement, things like that, they add value. The big mistake that I see all the time, though, this is mistake number 5. And I know people who have done this, is when they over improve for the neighborhood. Do not get me wrong. I want you to make your house amazing. I want you to do whatever makes your heart happy. Whatever you decide to do, whatever renovation you want to make your home feel better, to make you feel better every freaking time you're in your house, because that's what's important. I want you to do that. But the big mistake I see a lot of people make is over renovating for the neighborhood. So I'm talking like, if you're in a neighborhood where the homes are $500,000 homes, 550, if you're putting in $100,000 bathroom, you're not going to get that back when you eventually sell the property. If you were renovating to sell, let's just say hypothetically, you're renovating to sell, it's $500,000 neighborhood. You put 100 grand into this bathroom, right? You do all this crazy stuff. You're over renovating for the area. You're not going to be able to list your home at $600,000 when everyone's getting 500 because you have a 100K bathroom. It doesn't work like that. That is the big mistake, because people, and it's not that you shouldn't make your home. Your home should make you happy. First off, your home should make you freaking happy. Everyone deserves to be happy in their home. And look, if you're okay with spending 100K on a renovation for your bathroom, and you're okay that you understand like it's not going to come back to you in value, I guess so be it. But a lot of people, they spend money on the wrong things, thinking that is going to increase the value of their home even more than it really is. And that's the big issue. If you over renovate, you're not going to get that back. You're not. You're just not. It doesn't work that way, because when it comes to value and when it comes to certain renovations, it all has to do with what the surrounding area will generate as a whole. I've never taken a buyer through a property in a certain area where we knew the homes were all between 525 and 550, and we're like, oh, and the seller writes in the description, $250,000 in renovation between the kitchen and the bathroom. We're not going to be like, oh my God, we got to offer $700,000 for this house, even if they list it at 700 and everything else is selling. Like, unless it's 500 square feet bigger or 1,000 square feet bigger than all the other houses, then you could justify increasing the price. But if you just spent an obnoxious amount of money on, trying to just make your house insanely expensive just by updating the, in a classic colonial where you can't really make the kitchens that much bigger, but you spent 20 grand on countertops and 25 grand on custom cabinets and $15,000 appliance package, you're not going to get that back. Now, it depends on the neighborhood, right? But if you're in a $1 million neighborhood, it's a lot different. But the big mistake is I see a lot of people over renovate. They over renovate and they put too much money into it. And look, sometimes people just don't care. Sometimes they don't care, and that's fine, right? But if you're really thinking in terms of how do I add actual value? Like how do I really add value to my property so it's worth more for if and when that time comes that I want to sell? So people, you have to really understand that these mistakes happen all the time. Like all these 5 mistakes happen all the time. And I really want to dive into next, which is going to be like a new segment on these lives. It's kind of like a homeowner hot seat type of thing. So I'm always going to go through the normal content. Then I'm going to transfer or transition into this homeowner hot seat. And it's going to be a lot of different topics, right? But it's all going to stem from questions that I've gotten, things that I've experienced, people, trying to get feedback on certain things. And today's is going to be about contractors. I know you all love working with contractors. It's one of those things that, again, that pretty much every single homeowner is going to go through. Unless you're that handy guy who can do everything, which isn't a lot of people. Let me tell you that. But I really want to talk about, and I'm coming out with a full-length video all about this. It's going to come out probably, I'd say this is, Wednesday, Friday, something like that. It's going to be all about how to hire and work with contractors. I'm going to get into right now my 6-step process, because I was sitting down and I was having a conversation explaining what I'm doing on YouTube. And this guy is not a YouTuber. He's a homeowner. He's owned a home for a long time. And I said to him, I was like, what is one of the worst things to you about owning a home? Right. And again, he's not a DIY guy. He's like, well, when something breaks or something goes wrong and I have to repair it. And I was like, okay, but what about that? He's like, well, then you got to hire someone. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. It's so funny. Like the people I talk to, and like when I put this out in my community group, how do you actually like hire a contractor? How do you like working with them? What are the issues that you go through? And this is why I'm making this the bonus round for today, the homeowner hot seat for today, because real talk, it's from start to finish on the exact process of how to hire the right professional, right? And I want you to feel confident when you do this. Like that's the most important thing to me. I want you to be able to spot red flags. I want you to be able to say the right things. And I want you to be able to confidently do this. You have to confidently be able to do this, because if you can't, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. And a lot of people don't have a guideline to follow. And I'm going to create a whole printout checklist for this as well. So as soon as that video is available, if you're interested, make sure that you just come back to the page and watch that again. It's going to drop on Friday, most likely sometime on Friday, and just comment here. Just comment contractor. That way I'll know. I'll be able to bring you back to it. Okay. So step 1, let's jump into this real quick. I'm not going to go super in depth because I'm going to go more in depth in this video. Step 1 is you have to be able to define the project. Okay. See, here's the thing. Good contractors aren't going to waste time on maybe. You need to be prepared when they walk in. You need to be able to bring photos, bring ideas for what you want to get done. You need to know what's going to be demoed in the house for the project and what's going to be built. You need to be able to clarify, right? Like what's decided versus what do you actually need help with? If you know crystal clear, Mr. Contractor, and this is what I would say. This is exactly what I would say for my primary bathroom. Mr. Contractor, here's what we want to have done. We want everything ripped out as it currently is. We want to make the shower 2 times as big as it is. We need washer and dryer hookups right next to the shower. We are going to use stackable washers and dryers. We need the vanity to be a double vanity, exactly where it is, but we want a brand new vanity. We want a bigger and deeper closet, linen closet, than what we already have now. And we want the toilet to be exactly where it is. But we want everything to be ripped out, with the exception of we have radiator heating system in our home, right? And we don't want to get that ripped out because those are great. They work. I know they're old, but they work, and we don't want them taken out. But we want the floor up. We want the walls to be redone. We want the ceiling to be redone. And again, we want the shower to be bigger. We're going to have, my wife is very smart with all this stuff, and she's going to draw it all up because that's how she is. She's going to come correct to begin, right? And you don't have to have full plans ready. You just need a plan. You absolutely need to have a plan to do this, okay? If you don't have a plan, you're going to go into it blindly, and you're going to end up not hiring the right person. I promise you, the pros are attracted to people who know what they want, and the wannabe pros are attracted to people that they could potentially take advantage of. That's how it is. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. Step 2, I like to call this the 3-call rule. This is how you avoid getting emotionally trapped in the first decent option. This is how you avoid that. Here's the deal. I recently needed work done in our investment property. We had 3 people come out, walk the job, explain what they would do, and then they gave us the price. All 3 of them were in the range of $2,500. It was like $2,400, $2,600, $2,550, right? I wanted it to be cheaper. But here's the deal. If 3 people who I vetted before coming out, personally have used one of them that I use a lot for plumbing issues, it's a plumber that I already like. If everyone was at that same price, that tells me that the numbers aligned. Everything aligned to around $2,500. Even though I thought it was a $1,500 job, it doesn't matter because 3 professionals came through and they all said around the same price. The power of 3, not 5, not 10, not 20. You have to just get 3. Get 3 solid quotes. Step 3, this is very important, and I understand people's opposition to it because if you're like me, I go to drop my car off at the mechanic. And even with my refrigerator, right? Because we had a fridge issue for 2 months. We had so many different repair people come out. It's always, they talk to you. Professionals, right? Whether it's mechanics, HVAC people, plumbers, electricians, they always talk to us, normal homeowners, like we know what the hell they're talking about. And we don't. We don't know the ins and outs and the flux capacitor, this and that. Look, you have to ask the right questions. And a lot of times we feel like weird about asking questions because we don't know. But I'm not saying you need to get into specifics. You have to run through your top 5 questions. The top 5 questions, right? And again, I'm going to share the top 5 questions, but there's actually more than that you should ask. But these are the 5 that you actually have to ask. That's coming out in the video. But you have to have certain questions that you ask no matter what. No matter what. Because if you don't ask questions now, you're not going to gain clarity on what is going to be done, how it's going to be done. And that is when you're going to run into major issues. If you don't ask the right questions, you have to ask the right questions. Step 4 is very important as well, because in this process, we want to make sure that we set the standard up front before the contractors come in and screw things up potentially, right? Because if they are sloppy before the job, it only gets worse from there. So we really have to get into that process of teaching them. We have to set expectations, set clear expectations. So much of life's issues could be avoided if you set clear expectations. That's it. Set how you expect people to talk to you, right? How do you expect to be communicated to? How do you expect that communication to be done? Text, email, phone calls? What do you want? I'm telling you, when you set clear expectations, the best contractors want to work with you because they know you're serious and you're going to weed out the crap ones, right? And don't ignore how they respond. If you get a weird vibe from this person when you're talking to them, that's an issue. If you get weird vibes, step away from that person. Go do something else. Go find someone else because that person is not the right person for you. So if you get weird vibes, if you set the clear expectations up front, you're going to set yourself up for success, dude. Because I've made these mistakes. Trust me. I've went with the first person just because I needed it. Blah blah blah. I've worked with contractors who didn't get back to me for days just because I was busy, and I've been there. This is why I have this framework for you. Step 5 is probably, in my opinion, the most important thing. We will say scope of work, right? What is the scope of work? And it's pretty much what is the plan of action to get things done. If you don't have a plan from your contractor, then you are doing things blindly. And the most important thing in step 5 is get everything in writing. Get everything in writing. Everything. Payment schedule. It has to be tied to certain milestones. Not you'll get paid in 2 weeks. It's you will get paid payment number 2 when all the drywall is up and it's inspected and it clears what I want. That's when you get payment number 2. How are you going to address changes? Because changes will come up. How do we address changes? This needs to be detailed in, and it doesn't, you don't need a lawyer to have this 45-page contract. It's 1 or 2 pager. Because again, if you're not clear, if it's not in writing, then you have nothing to fall back on when things go bad. Because things potentially will go awry and things change. Moving on, step 6. This is the last one. And it's where most homeowners just fail. They get checked out. They're like, well, I got everything in writing. I picked everyone. The crew started showing up. It's just going to go along without me. No, you need to still be involved. You need to still clearly communicate. You need to be leading the charge. Be the contractor. Check in regularly. Match what's actually happening to what was promised. And please speak up early. Please. If something is wrong, if you feel like something is wrong, if something is not the way you wanted it, you need to speak up early before they get further. And it's going to cost more money to go back and fix that issue. It's not about micromanaging. It's about being a partner in the project. That's what you're looking forward to doing. That's what you need to do to be successful. You need to be a partner in the project. That's the 6-step framework. Again, I'm going to go into much more detail in my video coming out. And if you see this weeks from now, just know that that video is available. And all you have to do is comment contractor, and I will give you the full checklist when it's ready. That is what I have for this live stream today. This was amazing. I'm really excited to share things like this with you. I love being a homeowner. I love being in the real estate business, being able to help people, even if they're not selling. Because here's the thing, most people are not selling right now, but the homeowners want to protect their biggest asset. And that happens all the time. Look forward to speaking with you guys. If you have any questions, make sure you drop it in the comments and I will respond to every single one. Check it. Yeah. See you later. See you next week.